Once again, hello everyone, and hello to my students in ethics and critical thinking. So once again, this is your professor, Dr. Ilag, and this is the continuation of Lesson 1 with the topic Symbol, Meaning, and Definition of Philosophy in the context of the wider topic, the what and why of philosophy. So, we are ready now to proceed to go much deeper, and this time we are attempting to apply our concept of definition. So in the previous discussions, I have presented to you how complex are the aspects of definition and its processes. So at this point, let me now give you the etymological understanding of definition, and that is de plus finire. So these are Latin origins of the word definition. So putting them together, it serves as the verb in Latin, definire. So that is an infinitive verb, like in English. So this is an infinitive verb, which means to put limit or limitation or boundary, meaning to say that you can only define anything. If you can put limit or limitation or boundary on that something that you're trying to define. On the other hand, you'll never be able to define anything if you cannot put limitation or boundary on that something. So actually, class, there's just a play of word here, and that is logic, that is critical thinking, that is philosophy. What I'm trying to say is you can be good in philosophy if you are familiar with the terminology that you're using. I mean, you can manipulate it. Like in mathematics, you're said to be good in mathematics if you are capable of manipulating the numbers in front of you. So here in critical thinking, you are good at it if you are capable of manipulating the words, so that later on you can apply it logically. Okay, so this aspect now gives you the initial understanding that the word definition is very near to the word definite. And in fact, it is redundant. Because we can say here that you can only define something if you can make it definite. Do you get it? If something cannot be made definite, then you cannot define it. Does it sound logical? Alright. So, let us apply now that concept. So I have here an example. And as you can see, we have here a dog, a cute dog. Well, everybody, I guess, is familiar with the dog. And especially nowadays, many people have pets. And one of the most common pets are the dogs. So in fact, we love dog. The dogs love us. And in fact, some people would say that the dog is man's best friend. So you can say that pretty well. You know what a dog is. You understand, and you're confident enough to tell me if I ask you the question, what is a dog? All right. So let us say that Philo. Okay. So here is your friend Philo, and Philo is belonging to your class. Okay. So, and I asked Philo to stand up in front of us, and because I would like to test the capacity of Philo to understand, to answer questions. Okay. But maybe Philo is so confident, so right away he stood up, because he would like to demonstrate to us that he is really confident, because he believes that he knows what a dog is. Okay, so we will try Philo. Okay, so I have a very simple question to Philo. What is a dog? Okay, as the initial step of Philo, so he starts with, of course, enumerating the observable characteristics of the dog. So he's mentioning that, for example, the dog has a fur, the dog has whiskers, which are correct. Now we can observe that the dog, no, is possessing whisker, so no doubt about it. So he would further tell us that the dog has tail, or he can even tell us that the dog has two eyes, and the dog is quadruped, etc. So in short, Philo is so confident that he knows what the dog is. All right. So, but I have some probing questions to Philo. For example, I ask him, if you say that the dog has two eyes, do you mean you're already able to define what a dog is? Because in my own observation, other animals are also possessing two eyes, no? Like a carabao has two eyes, no? A cow has two eyes, cat has two eyes, and so on. So I guess that Philo, for that matter, is not yet defining what the dog is. So also, by saying that the dog has 4 feet, quadrupeds. So, do you think, guys, that Philo has already defined what a dog is by simply saying that the dog has 4 feet? I don't think so. So in short, in that process, we can find Philo unable to explain what a dog is. Okay? So, and perhaps we are starting to annoy him, saying that, well, we suppose that you know what the dog is, but only to find out that you don't know really what the dog is, because all the things, now all the characteristics, because you can go on enumerating all the physical characteristics found in a dog, but you're still unable to define it if the characteristics you identified are also common among other animals, right? So Philo, in short, is not yet defining what a dog is. So we may say that at this point, he's a failure to define a dog. Okay. So we allow Philo to still remain in front of us, thinking something, organizing his thought, and then finally, it only makes sense, no, to us and to all of us. So when Philo finally said, and let's see it, that the dog barks, then I think that is the totality. No, I mean, Philo is able now to define what a dog is, because logically speaking, that is what makes a dog dog. No? Of course, there are many ways of defining what a dog is. Science has its own way of defining what the dog is. No? But here in logic, we have a simple way of defining the fact that the dog is the only animal which is associated with barking is sufficient for us to say that a dog is defined according to that characteristic. So when Philo says the dog is a kind of animal which is barking, no, I mean, aside from the other physical characteristics that he mentioned already, then we have now a complete understanding of what a dog is. Okay, we can imitate the sound of the barking dog. So you and I can imitate. Philo, I think, can imitate that sound of the barking dog. I think even the dolphin can imitate that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that kind of animal, and we as human beings, we are not said to be barking, no? Because there is only one kind of animal which is, as I said a while ago, associated with barking, and that is the dog. So the dog is the only kind of animal which is barking. So in that way, we can say that we are already able to define what a dog is. Meaning to say, we are able to make it definite. We are able to put limitation on it. We are able to give a kind of characteristic which is not found among other animals. All right? So we are able, in short, we are able to put the dog inside a box. No more, no less. For that reason, we are able to define what a dog is. So we congratulate Philo for that. So he's good because he's able to define what a dog is. Okay, good. Now we proceed to another problem. Okay, so, well, of course, aside from animals, the dogs as animals here in the animal kingdom, there is also another kind of animal, the humans. Well, I said it belongs to the animal kingdom because, Aristotle once said that man is a rational animal. Okay, so our next problem is, what is a man? By the way, when I say man, I am not referring to a male individual, but I am referring to the universal concept man. No? So whether you are a male or a female, you are included in this terminology, man. Okay, so we defined already what the dog is, and we are good at that. But let's try another thing, man. Our question is, can we define man? And so I call our friend, Sophie, and like what we did to Philo, so we asked Sophie to stand in front of us because I am going, as a professor, I'm going to ask her about her understanding of man. And let's say that maybe Sophie is so confident because at a certain level, maybe she knows what man is, so she's confident that she can define what is man. So let us see. Okay, so the same with the steps used by Philo. So Sophie also attempted to do it that way. So started enumerating all the characteristics, physical characteristics that are observable in a human person. No? So having that guy having 2 eyes, no? Of course, we understand commonly. We have a common understanding that man is featherless, of course. That human has 2 feet, so bipeds, so to say. So Sophie is so confident that those answers will really lead her, to the right understanding of what man is. But of course, I have a probing questions to Sophie. So by saying that man is a two-eyed creature, do you think Sophie is able to define already what man is? Well, according to my own observation, looking at many creatures, and most of the creatures are having 2 eyes, so because that characteristic is also found among other creatures, I think Sophie is not yet defining what man is. So she is a failure on that aspect. And then by saying featherless, of course, man has no feathers. But there are other beings that do not have feathers also. So do you think Sophie is able to define what man is by simply saying that man is featherless? What about bipeds? No. Okay, I don't think so, because in my observation, there are creatures who are bipeds also. No. I think a good example for that is chimpanzee. So they are bipeds also, but chimpanzee, of course, is not considered a human being. So the same. So you can go on and on, enumerating all the physical characteristics found in a man, but you're still unable to define it if the characteristics you identified are also common among other creatures. So let us say that Sophie is a failure at this point. So we can annoy her, saying that, well, you don't know, you don't really know what man is. Okay, in fact, by saying that man is featherless and also bipeds, is to recall something, a spectacular event that happened in the past, in the ancient period, when Diogenes, one of the contemporaries of Plato, used that definition. The understanding that the human person or the human is simply a featherless creature, and that the human creature is having 2 feet. So actually, it was an anecdote that happened in the school of Plato during the time. So when Plato attempted to define man as a featherless biped, so suddenly Diogenes plucked a chicken and brought it into Plato's academy. And he said, "Behold, I have brought you, Plato, I have brought you a man." And of course, the people in that academy was in trouble, no? Because well, they are not expecting that there is someone who would do it that way. And so what happened to the academy of Plato was that the academy added something to that definition. So, and what was added is with broad flat nails. So it was added to that definition. But I think even that addition is not yet sufficient for us to really define what man is. I mean, to really put man inside a box, no? To make man definite, and to put man in the box, to say man is no more, no less, no? I mean, which means that we can have an exact definition of man. Okay, so as I said, so that attempt of defining man is a failure. But finally, it will only make sense when Sophie mentions something, no? And that is when Sophie says that man thinks, because thinking is logically what makes a man man. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is what the characteristic that defines human person is that he or she is capable of thinking. And we can find that as the definition of Aristotle also, when he said man is a rational animal. Because what distinguishes us from the rest in the animal kingdom is that capability of rationalizing. Alright? So, and we say that we find now the exact definition of man. Well, I think the other definition, especially the definition of science of man, also conforms with that definition, with that logical definition that we are talking about right now. So let me read it to you. So it says, human being is a culture-bearing primate classified in the genus Homo, especially in the species Homo sapiens. So human beings are anatomically similar and related to the great apes, but are distinguished by a more highly developed brain and resultant and the resultant capacity for articulate speech and abstract reasoning. Wow, very long definition. But as I said, that conforms to the logical definition that we are able to attain at this point. Okay? So we have now a conclusion at this point that we are capable of defining what man is. So congratulations to all of us, especially congratulations to Sophie. All right, that's great. So yeah, so at this point we can have an insight. So Pilo says, obviously in the case of dog and man, we can come up with exact definition. Okay, that is great. And according to Sophie, but Sophie has another is thinking of another problem. And she says, but aside from animals and humans, there is God. All right. Now she has another problem to give us, and she asks, can we define God? And that is now another problem for us. It is actually a big problem, and we are here to still find solution to that problem. Can we define God? Wow, that is another unusual question. Let's find out. Now, looking back, considering the previous discussion about the etymology of definition, saying that we can only define something if we can make that something definite. But considering the nature of God, which is unlimited or infinite or boundless, I think it is a contradictory of the previous principle that we have highlighted, no? The principle of definition, that we can only define something if we can make it definite. Because if the nature of God is that God is boundless, or God is unlimited, or God is infinite, how can we define God? So I think at this point we are on a crossroad. No? How are we going to address this problem? So this is crucial. Okay. Now, I think to address this, we have to be very creative. Okay. So let me consider you, your class. Okay. So let us imagine that we are in a classroom right now, and we have our topic now, our subtopic, which is about God. Well, and our purpose, of course, is to find a solution to that puzzle, whether we can define God or not. Okay, so let me use this as my approach. So suppose I go around and I approach you one after the other. So I approach every one of you, and I give you this instruction. Once I say God, and then you provide me a word or a phrase as your own description of your God, of the God that you know. Okay, so that is the situation. So I go around, I approach everybody, and as I ask and I say God, then individually you have your own words to say or phrase to say. So some of you perhaps say God is omniscient, no, all-knowing. Some of you say omnipotent, all-powerful. Some of you perhaps may say omnipresent, all-present. And then some of you perhaps would say God is a creator, or God is a savior, or God is loving, or God is merciful, and so on and so forth. Meaning to say, if I have, for example, 35 students in my class, then I got 35 descriptions no, words or phrase that points to or describes the God that you know. All right? Okay, that's good. So you have something to say about God. And then perhaps my next step would be to ask you, okay, class. So our question a while ago was whether we can define God or not. But then you said something about God. Now my question to you is, are those words or phrases that you said about God definitions? Do you get it? Are those words definition? Okay. So of course I expect that there are different answers. Maybe some of you would say yes, and some of you would say no, knowing the fact that what you have said, of course, are not definitions. Okay, and then I determine, and I say, well, all those words that you said to me, referring to the God that you know, are not definitions. They are not definitions. Now, if those are not definitions, then what are those? Because according to my analysis, you were able to say those positive words about God because my assessment is that perhaps your life is a good life. No? If your life has some problems, then I think your life is more inclined to goodness and positivity. Because the mere fact that you describe your God as a positive God, as a loving God, Savior, merciful, and so on, then I can connect it to your own worldview. So you have a positive outlook about life. No? So you have a good life. That is my assessment. So what I'm trying to say at this point is that those words that you mentioned about God is connected to your experience. No? And I would say that because those are connected to your experience, I would say that those words are subjective. No? Meaning, to say subjective, it is experiential. No? Because when one of you said that God is a Savior, it may not be necessarily true to other people next to you. And to say subjective, people are different from each other. Different, yes. Okay, so let me move a little step forward. Aside from Sophie and Philo being included in our class, for example, let me include another very controversial figure, Hitler. So I hope you know, I hope you're familiar with him. Well, for many people, he is considered as an evil person. Although not all people are considering him as an evil person. For instance, psychology would say that well, we know that Hitler is a kind of individual. No, he was responsible for the killing of millions of people, and we know that because that happened in the history. No, it is of course connected to the Holocaust. So what we know about Hitler is he is a bad person. No, he is evil, in fact. Okay. But well, according to psychology, well, he is just a kind of person who is a wounded person, and because his woundedness is not addressed, no, then later on in his life, because if you go back, it is said that when he was a small kid, he experienced cruelty, no, from his stepfather. And then it is said that when he grew up and rose into power, so he reenacted all the cruelties that was done on him, no? And he finally into the killing of millions of people. So let us say that there are people who are trying to somehow justify why Hitler resorted to that kind of actions. Okay, so in connection to our class, let us use our imagination. Let us imagine that Hitler is part of our class, and Hitler is next to you in your seat. And like what I did to you when I asked you to provide a word, word when I say God. So then I approached Hitler and I said, Hitler, what can you say when I say God? Well, as expected, well, Hitler would say, well, God. Now we can expect of course, the negative. God is evil, perhaps. He will say that God is bad. No? And maybe to the extent that he will say God is dead. Because in fact, Hitler is an atheist. Okay. But let us suppose, let us say, for example, that for whatever reason, no, Hitler happened to convert himself from being an atheist to somewhat atheist. So suddenly, for an unknown reason, Hitler changed his answer. He right away said, well, God is good. No? God is forgiving. No? And in fact, God is a savior. Well, maybe that can happen. No? Who knows? Because God, as we know, is God. God provides miracle. No? And so, to cut the long this story short, let us say that Hitler is able to be converted to something good individual, and now he is part of you. Now, my question to you is, do you think it is possible? Okay, so, well, thank you, because I suppose that you will say yes, it is possible. But my point here is that my concern is that there is a sudden change, no, in the words being used by Hitler here. There's a change, no, from saying that God is evil to saying that God is good. And I think I can also say that it is subjective. And being subjective, we can connect it to the experience of Hitler, if he really happened to experience that conversion. Okay, so I think at this point, I am trying to solve the problem about the question a while ago, whether God can be defined or not. So let me go back to the question I asked you a while ago. If the words that you said referring to God are not definitions, then what are those words for? Okay? Alright. So let us suppose that at this point, Philo and Sophie are there to raise their hands, saying that, well, those words that you guys have said, including Hitler, no, are not definition, because in fact those words are simply meanings. All right. So at this point, I hope something is becoming clear to you, that there is now a difference between meaning and definition. All right. So because meaning is not necessarily putting something inside a box, but I think meaning is Meaning is giving an interpretation, maybe a broad interpretation. And so, I think at this moment we can now compare, definition and meaning. No, for example, by saying that definition is objective, before we can come up with a definition, it has to be agreed, agreed upon by people. That is why the big dictionary in a library, that physically big library there in a library, the physically big dictionary there in a library contains definitions. So those are actually written there, and those are necessarily products of the agreement of people. So they become conventional, right? Product of agreement. Now, to say meaning is to say it is subjective. Okay? And it does not have to be a product of agreement of people in the world. In fact, what happened to our activity a while ago is that all of you in the class, including Philo and Sophie, including Hitler, you guys are giving your different meanings, subjective meanings referring to God. I think we can also say those are opinions, because it is based on your own understanding. All right? So you see that at this point, we are now gradually solving the problem about the difference between meaning and definition. Okay, so let me proceed. I have here a research material, and I retrieved it from difference between. So, and I think this conforms with my discussion, my own explanation of meaning and definition. So let us consider at least three in this comparison: scope, emphasis, and structure. Let's find out. So meaning and definition here. So here's meaning, here's definition. So under scope, we see that meaning is unlimited. One word can have different meaning. So it conforms to my explanation a while ago, that when we say something is subjective, it has wider in scope. In fact, we can say that this is endless, because to give meaning to something is an endless process, and for that reason, you will not be able to make it definite. All right. Now, with regard to definition, in terms of scope, so it is limited. The actual definition is straightforward and the same to everyone. No? So it is objective. Unlike when we say subjective, it is different to everyone, because everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion. Now let's consider the emphasis. So meaning is emotional. And I think it jives with the previous activity. All right? When you provided your word or phrase, I think that is connected to your emotion. So when you say that God is merciful, God is Savior, God is kind, I think that is emotional. Okay? I think that is pretty clear at this point. Now, definition in the context of emphasis means it is analytical. All right? So definition is analytical and not emotional. Now, in terms of structure, and let's see, meaning is flexible. All right? So a while ago I said meaning can be endless as long as you can provide meaning to something in relation to your experience. Then it is endless. It is flexible. The same thing can mean something different to another. So you can go on and on giving your own descriptions of God, depending on your own experience with your God. All right. And now finally, when we say, structure in terms of definition, it is rigid. So the definition is strict and unwavering. So it is not changing. Although later on, when we are already in the discussion of logic proper, we'll also explain that because definition, no, is conventional, the word that we use or the term that we use is conventional, then it is subject to change. But the process of changing of the word is not an easy process. No, it has to be based on the agreement of people. All right. So I hope at this point in our discussion, I am able to clearly, with the help of Philo and Sophie, of course, able to explain to you the difference of definition. Now, our other concern is the other side of the question. Now that we know clearly that definition and meaning are different from each other, are they the same? I think that we are simply polishing the thought in our discussion. Okay, let's find out. So we have now an insight here, and Philo is saying, therefore, we cannot define God according to him. And of course, Sophie is in agreement, saying that precisely, no, based on our discussion, precisely you cannot define God because we can only give meaning to God. So something is becoming so clear to us. We are not defining God, but the only thing that we do is that we are providing meaning or meanings to God, because the fact is God is unlimited, and that cannot be subjected to that rigorous process of defining. All right. Now we are now at the concluding part of our discussion. So, and here we will try to answer the other side of the question. No, are meaning and definition the same? Okay, let's read this. Meaning versus definition. Meaning and definition are two different things, yet same. All right. So I would like to clarify this point. Actually, meaning and definition are not only different from each other, no, based on our discussion. We are able to establish that they are really different from each other. But we cannot also deny the fact that they are the same. So we can say that the situation between meaning and definition is paradoxical, because they are different and the same at the same time. All right? That is paradox. And I suggest that from now on, you have to have a clear understanding of the term paradox, because I tell you that's quite confusing. It is not readily easy to understand what paradox is. Okay, but I would like to have an advanced explanation that the word paradox is the word that can help us to solve many problems in our life, especially problems about this complicated world. Because to say paradox is to acknowledge, to recognize that there is always a solution to our problem, like in the discussion that we have right now. So meaning and definition seemingly is a conflicting situation, because meaning and definitions are two different things. And yet we discovered that the relationship between them is paradoxical. Meaning, yes, they are the same, but we can find a reconciliation between these two. It is like we are imagining a Venn diagram, no? Two circles overlapping each other, and then creating the so-called middle ground. All right. So those two circles are different and yet found to be reconciled or the same. In the same way, we are seeing the relationship between meaning and definition that way. Okay, they are different and the same at the same time. The same because both of them, according to Philo, same because both of them give an interpretation of a term. Alright? But according to Sophie, different because meaning is a broad term, a broader term, while definition is a narrower term. So it's like, if I am to demonstrate it, so meaning is like this. It is like meaning is an umbrella, and definition is found to be under that umbrella. Okay? So meaning is a broader terminology in terms of extension, logically speaking, and definition is a narrower term found to be under meaning. And so we can say as our conclusion that all definitions are meanings, because any definition is taken as a meaning of a given term. You see that? All definitions actually are meanings. Of course. Because definition gives an interpretation of the term. So also meaning, it gives an interpretation of the term. However, the meaning of a term may not necessarily stand as its definition. And then finally, as I used to explain, this is a paradoxical in relationship, which is demonstrating an interplay between subjectivity and objectivity. Summing up, we say that meaning is approached based on subjectivity. So it is flexible, it is endless in its process, while definition is understood in the context of objectivity. So it is rigid, it is not flexible. Although it can be changed, it has to undergo a process. Now, in relation to philosophy, very briefly, let us talk about the undefinability versus definability of philosophy, because that will be the content of our next discussion, the next lesson. Based on our previous discussion, it follows that philosophy can be both undefinable and definable. Okay? I mean, the clue for that is based on our discussion about the relationship between meaning and definition. So we can say at this point that philosophy can be likened to a coin. A coin has two sides. Looking at one side of the coin, you can say that philosophy cannot be defined. But looking on the other side of the coin, you can say that philosophy can be defined. And in fact, it provides various definitions. Now, how do we explain it? Well, as I said, our clue is our discussion about meaning and definition. So the undefinability of philosophy happens if it refers to the processes of personal reflection on the meaning of the human life. If philosophy refers to our personal reflection about the meaning of life, then we can say that we cannot define philosophy. Like when we say every people have different different people have different philosophies in life. So that way we can say that we can never define philosophy, because for that purpose, philosophy pertains to the quest of personal outlook or lifestyle concerning the wholeness of reality. Philosophy becomes the process of finding the meaning, and meaning, as we have discussed, is endless. Okay? Now, saying that philosophy is definable is easier, because in fact, philosophy can be defined. No? And on the next discussion, there will be several definitions of philosophy to be provided. Okay, and we are going, in fact, to discuss those definitions. All right, so we are now coming closer to the end of our discussion, our long, rigorous discussion of a very important aspect of philosophy, which is defining. But before I end, let me borrow at this point a concept, because of course, no, our concern is philosophy. You notice that right now we are not able to define yet the word philosophy. We will offer definition of philosophy in the coming discussion. Okay, so let me borrow at this point an equally interesting thing, because as I said a while ago, we are using our critical thinking, and along our way, if we notice something important which is worthy of our notice and explanation, then we stop and take a look and consider. All right, so like philosophy, love can be considered also likened to a coin, no? Because love can have is having two sides also. Looking at one side of love, we can say that it is undefinable. Nobody is able to offer any definition of love. And I guess the reason why the world is so disorderly, I'm sorry to say that, the reason why the world is so chaotic is because people have different understanding of love. People have different interpretations of love. For example, if I, like the process that we did a while ago, suppose I ask you again, one after the other, asking you or saying the word love, and asking you to provide any word or phrase that comes to your mind when we say love, then I think the process is endless. You can go on and provide your words or phrases to say, referring to the concept love, because we have different understanding of love, and unfortunately that understanding is subjective. For instance, some of you may say love is sex, love is caress, love is understanding, love is a feeling. But unfortunately, perhaps, maybe some of you would say love is killing. Why not? In fact, some people kill in the name of love. Okay? So for that reason, having subjective opinions or guesses about love is not a productive reality. Well, I think love is not that understandable to the humans, because in the first place, the author or the creator of love is not humans. It is God. No? And we are only borrower. We are only a borrower of that concept. And being a borrower of that concept, it is perfectly understandable that we can have a wrong interpretation of love. And that's what makes our world is not a better place to live in. However, looking at the other side of the coin, I would say that love is definable. And in fact, there are some individuals who courageously put forward some definitions on love. Well, not to mention Jesus Christ, no, because he has his own. He provided his definition of love. But particularly, I would like to mention at this point one of my favorite authors of books, no, and that is M. Scott Peck, the author of the book the Road Less Traveled, and especially like and very much interested in the definition that he gave, and I love that definition. And I think if people in the world will only apply to the letter, no, that definition of Scott Peck, I think the world will become finally a better world to live in. Let me tell you that definition of Scott Peck. He said, "Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own and another's spiritual growth." I think that definition of love is a very fair definition of love. Well, I guess that love is not talking about unconditional love. In fact, that love is based on condition. So we can say that is conditional love. Not that before you can love, there must be a condition first, right? Because it says, first of all, you must apply justice. No? It must be a give and take relationship. No? And the first requirement for that kind of loving is loving the self first. Because if you do not love yourself, it follows that you cannot love other people. Because it follows the simple principle that you cannot give what you don't have. Alright? Also, I find that that definition of Scott Peck in line with the understanding of moral philosophy in terms of understanding of love. No? That the foundation of love is justice. Justice serves as the minimum requirement of love. That before you can actualize love, justice must happen first. The give and take relationship should happen first. Now, before you can claim that you are loving. On the other hand, you can now say that the maximum fulfillment of justice is love, or the highest requirement of justice is love. Alright? So once again, I would say that this situation can also be considered a paradoxical situation. So we may ask here at this point whether love is a mystery or paradox. So as I end my discussion today, I would like to emphasize that in terms of trying to find solution to our problems in this world, because we have a lot of problems in this world, and in the coming discussion, I will tell you that among all the creatures in this world, it is the human being which is the most problematic. You and me are problematic beings in this world. And so our concern while living in this world is to solve our human problem. And that is the very reason why we are philosophizing. And so my last question is love a mystery or paradox? Because if you will consider love as a mystery, then I think logically speaking, you cannot expect for any solution at all. Because the very word mystery tells you that you should not make any attempt to discover love, because it is a mystery. But what I would like to point out in this philosophical subject is that love should not be approached as something mysterious, but let us say that love is a paradox, because love actually has many solutions. Okay, there are many conflicting situations in terms of love, but if you apply the processes of paradox, then you can come up with convincing solutions that will actually help our life. All right. Finally, and this is my concluding reflection, our world is not a mysterious world, but simply a paradoxical world, which means it is always understandable and open for human inquiries. Seemingly, unsurmountable problems or conflicting situations arise along our way, but logical solutions are always there, waiting to be discovered if we are only curious and smart enough to use our gift of critical thinking. So at this point, I am ending my discussion in the first lesson in philosophy. So thank you so much for listening.